That is,
So
I'm very glad to welcome Dr. Sethuraman Panchanathan. It is
yes.
my privilege to introduce you.
Mhm.
The Honorable Sethuraman Panchanathan is a computer scientist and engineer and the 15th director of the U.S. National Science Foundation. The NSF is an $8.3 billion independent federal agency and the only government agency charged with advancing all fields of scientific discovery, technological innovation, and STEM education. Dr. Panchanathan has a distinguished career in science, technology, engineering, and education that spans more than 3 decades. He served as executive vice president of the Arizona State University Knowledge Enterprise, where he also founded the Center for Cognitive Ubiquitous Computing. Prior to becoming director of NSF, Dr. Panchanathan served on the National Science Board for 6 years and also served on and chaired numerous high-level research and innovation organizations. He is a fellow of the National Academy of Inventors, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and other prestigious science and engineering organizations. Dr. Panchanathan's scientific contributions have advanced the areas of human-centered multimedia computing, haptic user interface, person-centered ubiquitous computing technologies for empowering individuals with a range of abilities. Definitely, after the panel we had this afternoon, we are looking forward to listening to what you have to say, Dr. Panchanathan. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, Pierre, and thank you, Isabel, for inviting me to do this talk. I really appreciate the opportunity to be with all of you. You're having an excellent discussion. I caught some few things at the end of your past conversation that communicates to me the importance of the human element and how that's going to, make or break the success of AI almost. And you're all on the same page on that one. So what I thought I will do, I have 15 minutes. I was just going to talk about the AI work that NSF is spearheading primarily, and a little bit context to NSF, before I get into the AI discussion itself, if that's okay with you all. So are you all able to hear me well? Okay.
Yes, good. Please. We can hear you loud and clear.
Excellent. So I'm going to start with the mission of NSF because you may or may not be familiar with this. I'm just going to quickly orient you to that. There are 3 component parts of NSF: promoting the progress of science, advancing the national health, prosperity, and welfare, and securing the national defense. That essentially is the mission of NSF in a succinct form that has been advancing for the last 7 decades since its founding by this visionary leader after World War II, Vannevar Bush, who conceptualized how the nation needed an agency that would fund high-risk, high-reward research that would seed growth across the entire US enterprise and keep us in the vanguard. Over the 7 decades, much has happened, and this is relevant to AI. And I want to tell you that when people talk about AI, there is the mistaken notion that somehow AI happened in the last decade. Not at all. AI's work has been in place for the last 7 decades, 5 decades. That's where we are now. And this is something that I'm trying to make sure that our colleagues, our policymakers, our partners understand. Because when we talk about the importance of fundamental research, curiosity-driven research, discovery research, it's exceedingly important to put this in context. I have tremendous partnerships that I'm establishing across the globe. I had a great conversation with Dame Arlene UKRI, Mark Ferguson at SFI, and Alejandro Adam in Canada, Mona Niemer in Canada, and in New Zealand. And this afternoon I'm having lunch. I'm running to lunch with the Italian ambassador because I believe that this is something that is global in terms of the progress that has been made over the 7 decades. So you hear sampling of the 7 decades of advancement of what has happened at NSF. Even if you look at the 90s, for example, as one example of this 7 decades of performance, Google would not be here but for the Digital Libraries project that was funded by NSF to 2 young aspirants. Qualcomm would not be there if we didn't fund the SBIR program. as it is today. I would venture to say and be bold enough to say. So that's what curiosity-driven research, discovery-based research, agencies like NSF do to advance science and technology into the future. And so when you take this history, always history is a good indication of understanding how the future evolves. So I've laid out a vision for NSF, and AI is sent front and center in that vision, and you will see why. The three pillars that I've outlined are: how do you advance I'm just going to come back to this. Sorry about that. I moved a little bit faster here. And okay, here you go. The three pillars are advancing the frontiers of research into the future, ensuring accessibility and inclusivity, and securing global leadership through a partnership foundation. And that's why I'm talking to all of you. This cannot be done without partnership in every form and every mode and every type, with a sort of an interspersion of or a spirit of innovation that binds everything that we do. The middle pillar is exceedingly important. We need to ensure accessibility and inclusivity. We cannot and should not and must not continue this progress of the haves and the have-nots having access to scientific progress and scientific talent being nurtured through that. So when we talk about advancing the frontiers of science, I have this following vision for NSF. How do we strengthen at speed and at scale? And top left, curiosity-driven research is a bedrock of what NSF does. How new emerging opportunities can, like COVID, has brought to the front, how can we address challenges through technologies like AI? How can we have research centers across the nation, bringing partnership not only between researchers in the nation, working with industry and other partners, but across the globe? AI in every state. This conceptualization that I'm talking about is AI cannot be for a limited few or a limited part of the geography of this great nation. It's got to be in every part of this great nation. And so I've asked how the AI programs that we are putting in place are going to essentially result in unleashing ideas and talent across the broad socioeconomic, demographic, and the geographical diversity of this great nation. I'm going to jump a few of those and come to learning everywhere. If something is demonstrated that AI and automated tutoring systems and learning systems that has been worked on for many, many decades are now realizing their potential and promise, it's now. We have all pivoted to learning through remote means, working through remote means because of the pandemic. But that also has now presented us this opportunity of not only connecting talent and ideas everywhere across the globe, including the conversations that we're having so easily right now. Would I fly for a 15-minute conversation with this group? Something to think about. That we are making possible things that would never been thought of as elegant or as efficient or even as possible because of where we are with the technologies of AI and other computing and other technologies, including social behavioral sciences and other technologies converging and making possible. The key here is fusion. AI is made possible because of fusion of many things coming together. AI will achieve its fullest potential if and only if the fusion of different technologies and different scientific aspirations and different ideas are brought together. What do I mean by that? So as we move into the future, the frontiers of science, let me talk about the AI focus areas that we are considering quite actively at NSF. We are looking at human AI interaction collaboration. We are looking at advances in optimization. We are looking at AI and advanced cyber infrastructure. We're looking at advances in AI and computer network system. We are looking at dynamic systems. We are looking at AI augmented learning. We are looking at AI to advance biology. We are looking at even AI-driven innovation in agriculture and food system. This is just sampling. This is not everything. And this is possible because of the partnerships that we are engaging at full scope and full scale and full intensity. Can you imagine our partnership with the US Department of Agriculture, the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, essentially made possible 2 new AI institutes? I'm going to talk about that in a minute. the Google, Accenture, Intel, Amazon. I heard Amazon at the end of the previous conversation. All of these partnerships is making possible new vistas that we can explore because of the interest of the industry. Homeland Security, Department of Transportation, and a host of other partnerships. Let me talk about the AI institutes we just launched. We launched for $100 million price tag. We launched the NSF AI Institute for research in trustworthy AI in weather, climate, and coastal oceanography. We launched an NSF AI Institute for foundations of machine learning because we need to understand the fundamental aspects of computing, AI, machine learning, and others in order to build better applications. But it is not just that. How might the applications challenge fundamental problems being uncovered in computing and AI and machine learning to build better algorithms, better ideas, and better solutions, and better AI approaches. We launched an NSF AI Institute for student learning, augmented learning at the University of Colorado Boulder. These are each $20 million scale projects. NSF AI for molecular machinery, synthetic strategy and manufacturing at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. NSF AI Institute for Artificial Intelligence and Fundamental Interactions at MIT. So these are AI institutes that we launched from NSF, the 5 of them, but we didn't stop there. In addition to the 5 institutes, we also partnered with, as I said, National Institute for Food and Agriculture, and launched 2 AI institutes focused on agriculture, next generation of food systems, the future of agricultural resilience, management, and sustainability. And the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign project is in partnership with companies like John Deere. These are not companies that you would think of when you think of AI. You think of typically universities that are more partnering with Google and Amazon and others. But we are breaking the mold of this traditional thinking in terms of what we might do with AI in new vistas and pre-wire partnerships to unleash the potential and promise of an AI, but more importantly, challenge AI to be able to deliver the goods, whether it is privacy, whether it is security, whether it is ethical, whether it is a better social behavioral frameworks that needs to be worked with in order to deliver better outcomes. I'm glad to report the first 7 institutes that we launched with $140 million, $100 million from NSF, $40 million from NIFA, touches 20 different states of the United States. 20 different states being touched with partnerships across the nation. I have challenged the agency that with the next 8 institutes that we are launching right now, and I will talk about that in a minute, that we will touch all 50 states of the United States. There shall not be any state left behind. There is room for challenging ourselves to get K-12 talent inspired, community college talent inspired, 4-year college talent inspired, research university talent and ideas inspired, industry interactions inspired, city, state, and other local governments and their problem-solving aspirations realized through these partnerships. So in the next 8 calls, we actually have Amazon, Google, Accenture as explicit partners, where they are bringing in $20 million that makes possible 1 extra institute even. So we are now launching 8 institutes at $160 million scale. Right now, the call is out. All of these are ripe for partnerships across the globe. So I would strongly encourage all of you as partners, think about how we might link up and do better with partnerships, because these are global scale problems, global scale solutions are needed, global scale partnerships, therefore, are the only way it's going to make happen. So the 2020 AI Institutes will focus on the following 8 thematic areas: human AI interaction and collaboration, as I said, advances in optimization, AI and advanced cyber infrastructure. And I talked about this list earlier. These are 2021 focus areas in addition to the 2020 focus areas. So this is just the beginning. We are now unleashing the power and the potential of AI talent through partnerships, as I talked about, but partnerships beyond the traditional partnerships that we talked about. Partnerships in every form, every type, every mode, inside the agency and through the agency work that we are partnering with every agency across the nation and across the globe. Already I'm talking to UKRI and others in terms of what we might do around this concept of AI with Canada, with New Zealand and others, what we might do in terms of partnership in the area of AI. At the end of the day, the partnership is going to inspire people and talent. This is the way we are going to have sustained AI progress. Sustained AI progress will not happen unless there's a commitment to training of talent at all levels so that new ideas for the future comes about. And it also is made possible because AI translation into areas like we talked about, agriculture, AI into transportation. These are going to now challenge us in AI to do even more in terms of understanding the unsolved problems that needs to be unleashed so that we might then find solutions to them so that AI can holistically solve the problems for the future. Otherwise, it will be unrealized promise, unrealized potential. And it'll end up being a hype more than reality that impacts every aspect and segment of our society if it does not uplift the talent in the socioeconomic demographic and the geographic diversity of the globe, and in our case, the nation of the United States. It would have failed in its promise. It would have failed in its potential. And so I'm looking at the NSF and I'm challenging ourselves. Are we thinking innovatively? Are we holding ourselves accountable through data and analytics in terms of progress? Are we partnering in global terms through a collective leadership aspiration, through values, through aspirations, through openness, through transparency, through reciprocity and others? Are we planning for the infrastructure of the future? Are we strategically thinking about this every day, not every 3 years? Are we keeping the human element central and core to our thinking? Are we now going and talking about this and outreaching everywhere so that we might get the support that is needed to be able to build bigger and scaled futures? How can we strengthen at speed and scale? And that's what this is about. And so we need help. And the help has to come in terms of partnering on a strategic vision, growing through teamwork, building partnerships, leveraging the power of networks, scaling the change rapidly, and be advocates. And that's what this is about. And you are just yet another partner. And how might NSF and the partnership work even more to unleash better futures for all the constituencies that we are thinking about together? And so I leave you with those thoughts. In a 15-minute capsule, I could only rush through and talk about a very small glimpse, and hopefully that is useful to you. And as a new director of the Natural Science Foundation, the next 6 years, I endeavor to see how we can advance NSF in ways that unleashes the talent and potential across the globe through the talent and potential that gets inspired across this great nation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Panchanathan. That is definitely a very thoughtful presentation you made, and especially with a multidimensional challenge that you presented. In your introduction, you raised at least two issues, the issues of availability and the issue of accessibility. In your presentation, definitely you presented two basic agenda, a research agenda and an educational agenda. But through the issue of availability and accessibility, this also raises the questions of the future obstacles to be overcome in order to move forward with these things. But once again, thank you very much indeed, Dr. Panchanathan.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. I look forward to working with all of you in some form in the future. And thank you again, Pierre, to your invitation and Isabel's invitation. Have a wonderful rest of the conference.